I mean, I always knew they were canon, but this just really took the cake. Hey, welcome to Day Day Does, a channel where you basically watch me draw and talk about fandom/storytelling things. Today's video will just be me commenting on the fact that Tom Holland and Zendaya are official and the canonicity of Spider-Man and MJ, for those that had no clue. As a result, this video will be divided into two main sections with maybe mini sections in between. We'll see. Timestamps will be provided in the description box below. Now let's get started. Part 1. Celebrity Talk. Now, I'm not one to really talk about celebrities unless they're my favorites and only to my close friends who share similar interests, but I really wanted to speak on this not because I want to fangirl over this fact, trust me, I do inside, but because I want to warn every single Zendaya, Tom Holland, TomDaya, not sure if that's their ship name or not, Spider-Man and MJ fans about the dangers of their favorite ship. Please, 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 should TomDaya break up for whatever reason, do not take it to heart. I'm serious. I know a lot of people will get hurt once or if this couple breaks up. I know how fandoms react when real life couples get together and then break up for whatever reason. There is this disappointed devastation that people feel way too keenly than they really should. And that's not to criticize them for having hopes and fantasies. Like, I get it, man. There are just some real life people that look cute together and gives me hope that others will find love too. But investing heavily and living vicariously through these celebrities ain't it, fam. Let's circle back to past examples of celebrities who've hooked up after movies and shows only to disappoint the world once they decided to part ways. So the first on the bat will be Brangelina, aka Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, most notably from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, this is the ultimate power couple that dominated the social Hollywood scene for the duration of their marriage. The whole world aspired to be like Ange and Brad. People were invested in their relationship and the image they presented to the world and referenced them heavily as the happily ever after couple that everyone should strive to become. Then, before we knew it, the Brangelina brand cracked and shattered and this powerful duo broke up, which in hindsight was not a total surprise. Brad was still with Jennifer Aniston, you know, Rachel from Friends, when he met and hooked up with Angelina, and any relationship founded on deception and cheating is doomed to fail. Because, as the saying goes, if they can do it to him or her, then they'll do it to you. Next up, we have Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, most notably from Twilight. Now, if you aren't familiar with the supernatural sensation that basically founded the modern young adult genre in today's publishing industry, then let me tell you about the famous couple that starred in Twilight. This franchise was what made Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart household names and thrusted them into stardom. Fans were already dedicated to the characters Edward Cullen and Bella Swan's relationship, and this was amidst the Team Jacob and Team Edward love angle war. Then, when it was revealed that Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson were going out, everyone lost their collective minds. Like, there were rumors on set that Rob had been smitten with Kristen from the very beginning, like he even asked her to marry him early on, and that their chemistry was like electric, which was the reason why director Catherine Hardwicke chose Rob as Edward. But this relationship was so magical to all fans that it further painted the duo in this can do no wrong, perfect power couple, especially when they ended up announcing their engagement a few years later. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was one of the people that were really happy for Rob and Kristen when they got together and then later got engaged. Not because I lived vicariously through their relationship, but because I liked Robert Pattinson as an actor and he seemed like a genuine decent person. Plus, he was in love with Kristen, like he made no secret about that, so I was all for their happiness. However, celebrity romances should always be taken with like a grain of salt because before anyone knew it, the shocking news that Kristen had cheated on Rob with the director of the new movie she was working in was displayed like on every tabloid in the country. The fairy tale romance shattered, and fans and anyone invested in the Rob Stan/Edward/Bella parallel were absolutely gutted, and I mean gutted. Fans took to the internet and expressed their grief and despair about the situation. Like, I kid you not. Emma Clark, a fan of the couple, poured her devastation over Kristen's actions, and while some mocked her for being over-emotional about the situation, majority of people empathized with her and felt the same way and pretty much painted Kristen Stewart in a negative light for years. She wouldn't lose that negativity until like years later when she came out as bisexual and did other roles that weren't awkwardly sized too much Bella Swan type characters. Of course, in hindsight, it was also kind of no surprise that this would wound up happening because the two were basically 17 when they met and then were like, what, 2021 when they got engaged and later broke up. While some people make it work at that young of an age, clearly those two were kind of like not really meant to be. And I guess it's for the better. Next, we have Zac Efron and Vanessa Hudgens, most notably from High School Musical. At the time these two got together, I was a cute little youngin' of 12. While their on-screen characters got together, I didn't think much of the two dating at the time. It was just one of those, oh cool, that's a thing, things that happened. But apparently though, the majority of the world was heavily invested in a similar type Troy and Gabriella romance, and so they were basically together for about 5 years, so that's a good deal of time, and especially a good chunk of the High School Musical series. That was until around 2010 when the world was shocked when the two declared that they were splitting up. Fans were understandably upset, and there was even rumors that when Vanessa's music album came out around that time, one of her songs, Baby Come Back, was dedicated to Zac Efron. Not gonna lie though, even years later, that song was kind of a low-key bop. Next, we have Nina Dobrev and Ian Somerhalder. I'm so sorry if I pronounced this wrong. I honestly can't with their last names. But anyways, these two are most notably from the Vampire Diaries series. So this celebrity couple I didn't really care about, only because I didn't like the Vampire Diaries TV series. I was like still am to this day, a loyal fan of the books written by L.J. Smith, which the TV studio and her publishing house did her so dirty. But that's a discussion for another video, trust me. But anyways, this couple, it happened. From friends to lovers, whatever. Hardcore fans of Elena and Damon were ecstatic that they got together because this must be proof that Delena was going to be canon. And this was amongst the fierce war between like Stelena, Stefan and Elena, and Delena, Damon and Elena. Everyone was talking about them, and rumors even came out that Nina got proposed to. Of course, Nina later clarified that this was untrue, but all seemed well for the couple. Suffice it to say, the relationship, while cool, lasted like 3 years, and then the two ended up breaking up. Obviously, Delena fans were devastated, but Nina and Ian remained cordial friends, so nothing really toxic came out of that. However, I will add an interesting tidbit, that apparently Ian ended up marrying Nikki Reed, the Twilight star who played Rosalie Cullen. Do you guys know how interesting that was? When I looked that up and found out that was the thing, I was like, yo, that's so cool. So you could basically say that Vampire Damon did end up with another vampire. Finally, last example. And speaking of Spider-Man, for those of you who have watched The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man, co-stars Emma Stone, aka Gwen Stacy, and Andrew Garfield, aka Peter Parker, hooked up around 2011 maybe, which caused so many Spider-Man fans to rejoice and stan these two individuals, especially with how adorable and innocent they came across. And it seemed like their relationship was going strong because Andrew and Emma were clearly very much into each other. Sadly, the two broke up at around 2015, and no one really knew about this until they noticed the two not showing up at public events like they had in the past. So everything was pretty hush-hush until it started becoming kind of obvious in the limelight. This news came out of nowhere for fans and upset many that the Gwen-Peter fantasy was no longer a thing, which, if separating the characters and actors, as one should always do, Gwen's character, spoiler alert, ends up dying in the movie, so that particular fantasy can only really be lived in comics and fanfiction and the hearts of those shippers. Actor-wise, growing apart is just part of life and one of the many things that will happen to celebrity couples especially. It's cool that people get excited and swept up in the euphoria of your fave actors getting together. It does bring that bit of movie magic into real life, but we should always remember that just because people get together or break up should not negatively affect the fans and audience's lives. So rejoice in the giddiness of Zendaya and Tom Holland being a thing, but please do so responsibly. Now that brings us to part 2 of this video, the very brief history of MJ. Now, as cute and adorable as Gwen Stacy is, and she was intended to be Peter Parker's one true love, there's just something about Mary Jane Watson that makes me personally a loyal supporter, and also made Stan Lee and other creators decide that MJ was endgame always and forever. She's just so iconic at this point, so synonymous with Spider-Man himself that any iteration or spin-off of Spider-Man will have an MJ featured in there somewhere. I will highlight this point a little bit later. Now let's start with how MJ came to be. It was around issue 15 of The Amazing Spider-Man in August of 1964. MJ was first mentioned as a joke where Aunt May would try to set Peter Parker up with this girl, but Peter would always refuse to do so. He always wiggled his way out of meeting her, and this went on for 2 years apparently, until finally Stan Lee decided to let readers see MJ's face officially in issue issue number 42. Isn't that kind of hilarious though? Just the thought of Peter Parker pulling a Scott Pilgrim move makes me laugh my ass off, I kid you not. In the end though, instead of Ramona flowers, Peter would end up with the knives of his life. MJ was modeled after Anne Margaret from Bye Bye Birdie, and as soon as she stepped into the scene, it was over for all of her love rivals. MJ exploded into popularity thanks to her confident and fun personality. She was such a contrast to Gwen Stacy's like demure, good girl personality, and readers found themselves rooting for MJ and asking that she actually replace Gwen Stacy as Peter Parker's love interest. Now, in an interview on The Wedding of the Year in the book Marvel Age by Sholly Fisch, Stan Lee and Romita intended for Gwen Stacy to be Peter Parker's true love, but that MJ was just way apparently too much fun and lively and just really seemed to steal the show. So much so that they ended up switching the spotlight on Gwen. Not that Gwen was a bad character or anything, but it was just that she was just too nice and not very interesting, according to them. Now, I can't really complain. I was always an MJ fan, mainly because that was the first female Spider-Man character I imprinted on, and her personality is just one I can vibe with. Like, it's always been that way. No hate to Gwen, but that's just how the chips fell. After MJ appeared, the rest was pretty much history. Now, previously mentioning that whatever adaptation and iteration of the Spidey universe, Peter Parker will always end up having a Mary Jane Watson love interest. In the comics, in books, in TV shows, and movies, of course. Let's all clap for Kirsten Dunst's MJ performance. That is the MJ I grew up with personally. So when Disney's Marvel announced Spider-Man Homecoming happening, I was kind of weary, not gonna lie. Mostly because if I was going to have another Uncle Ben death scene origin story, I was going to groan. Thankfully, Disney decided to skip that noise and just acknowledge that everyone already knew about Spider-Man's origin story. So they skipped to Peter basically having his powers already and living his adorable but awkward high school life. I did see that Zendaya was in the movie and that she was going to be Michelle. And of course, everyone was like, who is Michelle? Like, who is this person? And then of course, come to find out, Michelle liked to be called MJ. And then suddenly it all made sense. I was kind of peeved that she didn't have the iconic red hair, but I like Zendaya as an actress and her MJ character was cute and still interesting. And I did like the potential dynamic MJ and Peter would have, seeing this from the writer's eye, of course, when I watched the movies. Before I knew it, Michelle kind of grew on me, even if she didn't have the red hair. Of course, in this fan art that I'm doing, I will add some semblance of red into her hair as a nod to the OG MJ in the comics and other adaptations, just because personally I like to keep certain iconic things iconic. Now, speculation about Tom and Zendaya's relationship was definitely rampant around that time. I think during and after filming as well, especially since their friendship looked very strong. I know a lot of stans and fans really wanted them to be a thing, but both actors denied anything romantic that was going on and confirmed that they were just friends. Now, cue the second Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, and oh, how I thrived because I was a huge sucker for any Peter Parker / MJ interaction. They are one of my favorite ships, and I was really invested in Disney's MJ nabbing Peter. So my shipper heart was deliriously happy and thriving. And it also confirms that Mary Jane would always be inevitable for Peter Parker. Hell, even The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man starring Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, there was actually supposed to be a Mary Jane character played by Shailene Woodley. I'm so sorry if I said her name wrong. In the first movie, she would only have a few minutes of screen time since it was to foreshadow her involvement and importance later on in the series. But because of Gwen's significance and subsequent, spoiler, turn away if you don't want to know the end of The Amazing Spider-Man. If you don't care, of course, let's continue. And subsequent death in the first movie, they decided having MJ appear would take away from the attention and impact Gwen's scenes would have. And it's kind of funny how MJ can still upstage Gwen despite a whole ass movie dedicated to Miss Stacy. Like, I honestly can't even. MJ is so my fave, you guys have no idea. And I'm so sorry, Gwen. Honestly, this is no hate to you. It's just, it's amazing how much star power MJ has, even though she's like just a regular normie. Now, the sequel that was supposed to happen but got canceled, thus canceling the rest of the Spider-Man series, was supposed to introduce MJ officially and help Peter through Gwen's death, which would have them bond and eventually have them end up together. Thus, my point of MJ being inevitable for Peter Parker is a universal fact at this point. Heck, even Into the Spider-Verse features MJ married to Peter. Don't you just love when there's like continuity and like consistency in character stories, no matter how interesting and different people try to make it? Not that I don't love the different and interesting, I really do, and I encourage that in writers and story makers, but seeing the inevitability is kind of comforting and proves that good character chemistry is everything. And fantastic fantastic for my shipper heart as well. And that brings us to the end of the video, y'all. Now, remember to be happy for Tom and Zendaya, but do not let it cripple you emotionally. And also remember that Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson have my true love ship seal of approval. Now, links for any sources appropriate to this video will be placed in the description box below. Let me know if you have any agreeing or disagreeing thoughts on who you like for Peter Parker to end up with. Drop me a line down below. My fan art in this video will be finished and posted on Instagram, DeviantArt, and wherever else. Links will be in the description box. Now, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you're feeling my content, as well as click the bell to get notified whenever I upload my next great thing. Until next time, y'all. Cheers!